Good day, everybody. It is the 6th of January 2019, and this is CB Ahern. It's still crusty eyes because it's early Sunday morning, and I have not yet finished my coffee, but I decided to put on a shirt to look half decent, seeing as I haven't had a shower either, and well, I don't want to look too terrible because that's easy for me to do. So yesterday I uploaded a video about The Shadow Party, the book I'm reading. What's the full title? The Shadow Party: How George Soros, Hillary Clinton, and 60s radicals seized control of the Democratic Party. And it's by David Horowitz and Richard Poe. And it's a great book and chock full of information, and I've been burying my head in it recently and taking some notes. The video I uploaded yesterday was just a little general appraisal of the book and of the sort of tactics people like George Soros and his organization, the Open Societies Institute, use. So there is a lot of obfuscation, both of connections and funding, and that is how politics is being played in the modern world. You don't know who represents who, you don't know where the funding is coming from, and you don't know where the interconnections lie, because there is just so much money invested in creating different organizations which are interconnected, and there is also a lot of buddy-buddy behavior behind the scenes, and no doubt payoffs behind the scenes, and people cutting deals behind the scenes. So it's hard to really say what exactly is happening, but you know, all we can do is look at what's apparent and try to judge as best we can from the given information. So George Soros was born, I believe, in the 1930s in Hungary, and he was employed under the fascists in Hungary during the time of World War II. He was an assistant to a high-ranking officer, and he was, because his family kind of were not, well, his father was a rabbi, I think, initially, and then he converted to Christianity, and then George kind of hid the fact that he was Jewish from the fascists and worked for them in finding out about other Hungarian Jews and reporting them and confiscating their property. And even though that's reprehensible behavior, I guess it is somewhat excusable considering the fact that he was some would consider a Jew. You know, it's kind of hard to even say, is he a Jew if his family decided they were no longer Jewish and his father converted to Christianity? You know, from some people's perspective he would be, and from others he would not be. I mean, there's all, like, the complications of life generally lead to so many, like, debatable points that, like, even calling him, you know, Jewish or an atheist, which he claimed he was in later years, or Christian, which you could also arguably claim he was, you know, all these definitions are problematic. So I just want to, at least for now, ignore them and just focus on the man's life and the man's doings. So he worked for fascists when he was a teenager, basically. So that's, you know, that's something that's been substantiated. And he studied at the London School of Economics subsequently, and went on to start an investment firm. I don't know, was it initially called like Soros Investment or something, but later it became the Quantum Fund. And that, the initial funding he got for that, I can actually link an article in the description of this video on archive.org, which I think has been deleted from the initial publication, which posted it, about the gnomes of Zurich, who I found out about from Robert Anton Wilson, like, probably more than, maybe not more than 10 years ago, but around 10 years ago, because I was a huge Robert Anton Wilson fan, still am. He's a fantastic writer and one of contemporary times' greatest philosophers, so I would highly recommend his work to anyone looking for interesting content and social commentary generally. But anyway, the Gnomes of Zurich are like super. They are like the banking elite of the banking elite, who are like, they got the name, I think, just as some sort of caricature on their appearance, because they're all like grotesque goblin-like individuals, but you know, they are very, very powerful bankers, and they, in this world, decide who succeeds and who fails. So initially, George Soros got funding from the Gnomes of Zurich and the Rothschild family specifically. I forget which Rothschild, but I will link the article anyway in the description of this video, and you can find out for yourself if you're at all interested. So Soros's quantum fund, which is one of the mechanisms through which he has been affecting change on the world, was initially funded by the Rothschild banking dynasty. And it makes me wonder the fact that Soros has had such great success in his essential gambling. I mean, you know, that's a lot of what investment banking is. It's taking risks and gambling huge sums of money, and he has had unheard of luck in the financial markets, and surely with the connections he has had to the Gnomes of Zurich and the Rothschilds, that maybe the path has been paved for him by powerful actors operating behind the scenes, and his trades have been accommodated because they are in the interests of other powerful players that he is connected to. But anyway, that's all speculation and conspiracy theorizing, so you know, that's not super solid, so that's an aside. I like to try to deal with cold hard facts, evidence and logic, and you know, maybe we can sometimes suppose and wonder from the given data that we have, but I will try as best I can to stick to the facts, and when I don't, then I will try to be cognizant to make it clear that it is just a consideration or a hypothesis that I am developing, rather than claiming that I have the facts of the matter about the situation. So anyway, Soros, one of his foundational excursions into the world of economics and manipulation of financial markets was when he broke the Bank of England, I believe in 1992. And he made, I think, his first billion off of the trades and the shorting of the pound, and cost the UK taxpayers $4 billion because of the market crash that was what he profited from and what he caused. And I wrote about this in detail in my article, George Soros, Foundations of Villainy, which I will also link in the description of this video, because like trying to remember all the bits and pieces while keeping the flow of the conversation or monologue going is kind of difficult. So I will link to the article and you can read that for yourselves subsequent to watching this video. So, after breaking the Bank of England in 1992, George Soros wanted to indulge his social concerns, which meant meddling more in politics than just interfering in the economic arena. So in 1993, he founded his now infamous Open Societies Institute, and this is one of the most nefarious weasel organizations on the planet, and they are, as far as I'm concerned, pure evil, because it's an organization which feigns philanthropy. I mean, PR is the veil that all these rich scumbags hide their power plays behind. They feign charitable works, and their charitable works always hide an agenda from which they gain more and more power and undoubtedly profit from. And it's just this big fake compassion play where they're all toting victim politics, shame politics, championing the collective will or proposed collective will of minorities and underclasses, but that's how they gain power, with compassion politics, with victim politics, and by manipulating public opinion. So the Open Societies Foundation, just if you look at the people who are involved, it's scary because they have like ex-military, ex-government agents, all at their highest levels in the hierarchy. People like who, let's see, because I have my notes here. The director of U.S. advocacy, Morton H. Halperin, who is ex-Department of Defense from the U.S. government, and also a member of the ACLU. There is Daniel Ellsberg, who is an ex-military analyst from the RAND Corporation. Yeah, if you don't know about the RAND Corporation, look into the RAND Corporation. Can you say military-industrial complex? Can you say private prisons? Yeah, then you can say the RAND Corporation. There's also Arya Nahir, the president of the Open Societies Institute and the Soros Foundation Network. He's a founder of the Students for a Democratic Society, which later became the Weather Underground. So before he did that, when he was a radical in the, I believe, 1960s, the Weather Underground were basically a domestic terrorist organization with ties to groups like the Black Panthers in the US, who were a part of the civil rights movement, but after the civil rights movement got crazy and violent. So yeah, who else is there? Yeah, I've already talked about Lynn Stewart. That was the attorney for Omar or something, Rahman the Blind Sheik. So there are a lot of really serious people involved, and this organization is very well funded and is run by ex-government agents and ex-military. So that should give you pause for thought and reason to worry on its own. One concept that we need to be very cognizant of, that the OSI use and that the shadow party and the deep state and the radical left more generally use, is an idea created by a Communist Party member, Jan Kozak, in 1957. He was a theoretician for the Communist Party, and he was like a political strategist. And he came up with the idea of pressure from above and pressure from below. So that is basically a political pincer movement where you drum up support from little people, like grassroots support or ostensible grassroots support, which would be AstroTurf, where you have either paid actors or useful idiots who are somehow benefiting from the agenda changes that you are pushing, petitioning government and speaking openly to create a certain cultural milieu where your agenda is being pushed through those people. So, for example, we have organizations in the US such as Hope Not Hate, who are, I don't know what they are. Are they an activist group or a lobby group, or do they count as both? Because they seem to count as both because, well, they take on civil rights issues, but at the same time, they petition government. So I'm wondering like how to even categorize these organizations, or if it matters. So you have organizations like Hope Not Hate, who are championing causes which are like civil rights causes, but they're just hysterical, and the way they talk about issues is disingenuous, and they make it so that anyone with conservative points of view is hateful, and anyone whose political ideology is not in line with theirs is somehow a bad person. So there is a lot of this sort of thing happening, and that's the sort of politics which are being pushed from the radical left. In 1971, there was a book published by Saul Alinsky, who was Hillary Rodham Clinton's mentor. And this is basically the field manual for radical leftist activists. And he was one of the main people in the movement in the 1960s and 70s to hijack the civil rights movement and begin to take over the Democratic Party with radical political ideology. And some of the concepts Saul Alinsky is responsible for perpetuating are ideas like an orderly revolution or middle-class guerrillas. And Saul Alinsky basically mandated that the revolution would be not fought on the streets, but fought by subverting political parties, by creating community organizations, by reaching people of every avenue in the community, like priests and union organizers and whoever else had any sort of political or social sway, and slowly coercing them into radical leftist politics and using them as tools through which you can affect greater change on the culture at large. And Saul Alinsky is a very important character who we should be aware of, because he not only had ties to political organizations and rich and wealthy investors, but also the criminal underworld, like Al Capone's head lieutenant, Frank Nitti, who was a notorious New York gangster who took Saul Alinsky under his wing and thought him, well, a lot, and who's to say what exactly he thought him. But Alinsky's mentor was Frank Nitti, the New York gangster, and Saul Alinsky was the mentor of Hillary Rodham Clinton. Let that sit with you for a minute. Hey everyone, this is just a little reminder to say show some support, like, comment, share my videos, and donate if you can.